Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Good evening to all of you. We will start the class with lectures on Homoeo philosophy by Kent. We are reading the science and the art, that chapter we are reading. The study of disease should not be for the purpose of naming. If it is so, the name does harm. When you think of a child suffering from measles, the idea of measles may go out of mind, but the character of the sickness of that particular child must remain in the mind. So if we remember about measles, we may miss the patient. In measles, the individual case may differ from one case to another. That he is explaining. At first, you will not be able to see what is meant by that, especially if you have been in the habit of studying cases for the purpose of diagnosis. I do not say this to throw a cloud upon diagnosis, but to show that the study of diagnosis is not for the purpose of making a prescription. The more you dwell upon diagnostic symptoms, the more you will becloud the ideas entering the mind that lead toward a prescription. Janta clear? He is telling I am not against the diagnosis, but diagnosis is important, no doubt, but it should not becloud, and it should not take hold about the prescription. Then the prescription will go wrong. You might go into the room and work an hour individualizing a case, deciding whether it were measles or scarlet fever. There are some confusing cases in the beginning. Well, you might say it is measles and must now have pulsatilla or scarlet fever and must have belladonna. So if you decide it is measles, you will think of pulsatilla. If you decide it is scarlet fever, you may think of belladonna. But you will not go through the symptoms whether the patient is having a pulsatilla symptoms or belladonna symptoms. So that is not important, that he is explaining. Because if the rash is there with fever, the rash will be there. In typhoid also, some cases of typhoid in the first week, there will be rash. So we may be confused whether it is typhoid or measles or scarlet fever, what it is. So whatever it may be, we have to study the case and then give the treatment. You will really see that such a state of affairs is misleading to the mind. If you are in an epidemic where it is necessary in order to save the neighborhood to know, for instance, whether a certain case of cholera or not, then it becomes necessary to do the two things. So to take care for about the other people, you have to know which disease it is. The family and the surrounding families are entitled to safety that a correct knowledge would give, and that protection, isolation, and quarantine would afford. There are two kinds of study, one with a bearing toward the classification that the disease belongs to, and one with the reference for the remedy that the patient needs. So these two things are important in each and every case. But I prefer to settle the patient first as to the remedy he needs. So he says, I will give preference for that. And this has very little to do with the classification except in a general way. After a remedy has been decided upon that clearly covers the symptoms and the patient receives his dose of medicine, the next point is what step is necessary to take in order to protect the people if this is a contagious disease. So first of all, you select the remedy. You give the dose to the patient. Then you think of all the things, and then you can understand, and then you can study about the other things of isolation of the patient, the other people, and what care should be taken for the patient. Suppose if it is an infectious disease, suppose it is measles or chickenpox, you should instruct the patient not to take a bath and not to expose to the cold weather, not to take cold drinks, not to take icy cold things. Why? If he takes all these things, the rash will not come out. It will be suppressed, and it leads to pneumonia or convulsion. When the rash gets suppressed, definitely it will lead to pneumonia or convulsion. Diagnosis is something that a physician cannot afford to be foolish about. He cannot afford to be a blunderer. He cannot afford to go around calling scarlet fever measles and measles scarlet fever. He should not get confused. He should not be so foolish. He must know enough about the general nature of the diseases that after the prescription has been made and the patient settled as to that, and the mother wants to know what is the matter with the child, to tell her, for in that instance she has a perfect right to know, naturally. If the patient asks, doctor, what is the suffering with me, what is the fault with me, you have to explain. Definitely you have to explain. In the second paragraph, second aphorism itself is explained. You have to explain in a clear way about the process of cure and also the other things. So the patient may ask, so you should be in a position to explain. But if you are in a confusion, or if you are unable to understand, or if you are unable to diagnose, or if you are unable to know the condition of the case, how can you explain to the patient? You have to instruct, you have to explain. These are the things you have to take care. Normally, whatever the things, in some doctors they say, in jaundice cases, no, all the things you can give. There are no food restrictions. No food restrictions, nothing, no care should be taken. Everything can be eaten, including non-vegetarian, everything in jaundice. But it is highly dangerous to tell like that. Some doctors, they state that jaundice is not at all a disease. It will come and it will go. So you need not follow the diet restrictions. Definitely. Because of that misleading things, I saw many men for because of jaundice is definitely a disease, no doubt, and definitely care should be taken about the diet. Everything should not be eaten. We have to decide the diet basing upon the increase, in which degree the jaundice is. Basing upon that, we have to decide. To know about the degree of the jaundice, definitely we have to advise the patient to go undergo a blood test. Whether it is in the beginning or is it advanced, far advanced. Sometimes when it is much advanced also, care should be taken, and diet only buttermilk and rice should be given, nothing should be given. So all these things are because of not following the diet restrictions strictly in jaundice. After certain years, again the jaundice will recur. After 5 or 6, if first attack he gets in 5th year or 6th year, definitely after 20 years he will get another attack, and it will be complicated. And no doubt, whether it is HBS AG or virus C, they will normally we think that they will complicate, whatever it may be, but it will lead to many complications after some years. Wrongly treated jaundice will lead to cirrhosis of liver. So definitely it should be treated in a proper way. You have to instruct the person what care should be taken. That is a case where the family must be protected, where outsiders must be protected. The physician must decide whether it is proper for the child to go to school or whether it is not proper. Parents will ask, can we send the boy to the school even though he is having jaundice or even though he is having measles? Can we send? Because if he misses the class, it will be a horrible thing. They will tell. But if he loses the health, it will be more horrible thing. For measles or chicken pox, nothing should be applied externally. But normally they will advise, no, it should not be left like that. You have to advise you have to apply some lotion or ointments. Definitely it will lead to suppression. Because of that only in villages also nowadays, even in villages, not in cities. Previously in cities also it was like that, but now in villages, they will not allow the doctor to treat if they have a suspicion that it is an eruptive fever, whether measles or chicken pox. The relatives of the patients themselves, they will say, no, we should not treat. They will say that the mother goddess will cause some wrong thing if we treat. So that is in vogue. Why it was so much popularized among the general people? Because even when the doctor will spoil the case, they will not allow the people will not allow the doctor to spoil the case. They will not give the medicine. But we have to educate them in one way. We should tell them we are not giving medicine for the eruptive fever, not to cure the eruptive fever. Only we are giving medicines not to be suppressed. This eruptive fever, if it suppresses, there will be danger in the throat or eyes. So to come out, we are giving medicine not to suppress. As long as the eruption will not come, the fever will not subside. So if we give some medicine for the high fever, definitely the rash gets suppressed. Then there will be much complications. But stupor will be there, drowsiness will be there, the lack of reaction in the patient. Again, we have to go to the remedies like pyrogen or baptisia or ailanthus or antimtart or lacasis or zincamet or sulfur. There are some conditions of chronic diseases which closely resemble acute diseases. For instance, these mimicking acute attacks that come on regularly as periodical headaches. One attack singled out might have the appearance of an acute miasm, yet the tendency to progress and not to recovery shows that it belongs to the chronic class. Those disorders that come from debauchery and drinking and overeating from immediate circumstances that are periodical or things that arise from the latent psoric condition, they are momentary sickness. And if it were not for the fact that man suffers from chronic miasms, he would not have these. These attacks would not form a sickness, would not have an appearance of acute sickness. It is due to chronic miasms that man has these little recurring attacks. In acute attacks, also frequent acute attacks are due to the chronic miasmatic state in the patient. These do not come with a prodromal period, a progressive period and a period of decline. They may have an attack and a decline, but not a prodrome. The acute miasms, like the chronic, have the prodromal period. Now, lesser writings of Kent. We are reading the Proving of Lexis. I think March 4th or March 3rd we have to read. March 3rd, 20th day. Slept better. Ate unrefreshed. Dreamed of birds and animals. Dreamed I was dying of dropsy from kidney disease. That water was collecting about the heart, headache, pain in the back of head, golden flashes above the eyes on closing them. Discouraged, that those despised who knew me best and had lost confidence in me, felt that none understood my motive, which is good, have lost the power to exert any influence. I am so tired and I fall in all undertakings. The physical and spiritual will not harmonize. Longing to break the tie that binds the spiritual to the physical. The influence of evil is uppermost. Morbid tendency to decide that wrong is right. Realize this only after it is committed, then feel crushed, cannot rise above it. When alone, the mortification of such mistakes nearly drives me wild. Cry for help and receive mockery. Lost all consolation so long derived from the unnumbered words of my mother. These griefs aggravate by mental efforts to rise above them, causing me to despise myself. Remorse, followed by tears. No strength of will to do desperate deeds. In moments of self-forgetfulness, duties are performed with surprising ease and success. Self-consciousness that cannot be overcome. Grief at committing actions which at the time seem proper, but afterward seem improper. Grief crowds all else out of mind. All is into all else. March 4th, 21st day. Chilly AM and PM. Went to bed to get warm. Hot spot on vertex and over eyes. Cannot think. Forehead too tight. Head from vertex. Heat from vertex into throat and back of neck. March 5th. Awoke 2 AM. Troubled dream. Crowding thoughts. Tried to study but old impressions crowded the subject out. After lengthened effort, broke into tears and dropped asleep. Awoke at 4 AM, cold, aching back, relieved by micturition. Slept, waked later, tired and discouraged. Distress in lower abdomen from running to take a streetcar at 10 AM. Nearly fainted over the simple operation of reducing a hernia, reducible. First time in 4 years. Slept PM. Waking, arms felt like limbs of trees. Numb. Stomach over which arms are closed, greatly distressed. Distress going downward to the uterus. Arms folded across stomach causes distress. Taste of blood. Because of bloody mucus from posterior nerve. Offensive perspiration. Several nights when going to sleep have felt the bed was floating as it seemed in childhood. March 21st. Deep yellow mucus stool sinking into the bottom of vessel. Watery with floating white particles upon the top like rice. 3 p.m. Great bearing down in the rectum as though it would protrude. Stool at 8 p.m. So hungry and thirsty, ate a soft part of raw oyster, which seemed to satisfy. Relief from the throbbing of heart, which was endured for a week. March 22nd, slept well, dreams natural. Dreamed that on preparing for lectures, could not hurry. There was such a soreness and gone feeling in the stomach. Back of head ached. No motion of bowels. First evacuation of urine. Thick, deep orange color. Unsatisfied feeling, causing burning and smarting of parts. Cold from knees down, ankle aches, but little of the burning and smarting sensations scalded of mouth and stomach present yesterday. A.M. Bloody mucus from left lung, weak in attempting to walk. Yesterday, while standing for the first time at the foot of bed, felt very tall and bed looked small. Felt 3 feet taller than usual. Toast, raw oysters, and cambric tea seem to suit. Crave sour things, which for 2 years have aggravated my bowels. So also salt. Blisters in mouth, on lips, under nose disappearing. As eager as a thirsty child for a glass of water. Small molded stool covered with mucus. Feel better. March 26th. Mournful, dreamy state of mind, as though something very sad were transpiring. Took Lexus 9M. Now, lesser writings of Hahnemann. Hmm. అన్నీ prevention of epidemics in town. Acquaintances kiss each other or shake hands. This ceremony should be omitted when the danger is so imminent as also drinking out of another's glass. We should particularly avoid making use of a stranger's water closet or allowing a stranger to use ours. At such times, we should never bring second-hand furniture into our second-hand furniture. I have seen putrid fevers occur periodically for many years in the country merely by old furniture, which had belonged to persons who have died of such affections coming into other families by purchase. అసలు ఎంత అసలు ఎన్ని అబ్జర్వ్ చేశారో ఆయన ఇవన్నీ మందులు ఇవ్వడమే కాకుండా ఇవన్నీ నేను హోమియోపతి కనుక్కోవడమే ఒక పెద్ద ఇది దాంట్లో ఇన్ని డైమెన్షన్స్ మళ్ళీ ఇవన్నీ domestic animals that are given to rove, such as dogs and cats, often carry about with them in their hairs the virus of infectious diseases. For security's sake, it is advisable to get rid of them at such times and not to allow strange dogs or cats to approach us. The drying up of marshes and old ditches close to human dwellings has frequently been the occasion of the most murderous pestilences. I saw the 40th part of the inhabitants of a large town die of typhus in consequence of the incautious draining of the town fosse. Whenever the slime of such a town fosse, which may have been accumulating for many, perhaps hundreds of years, is deprived of the fresh water covering it. The half putrid animal matter contained in it immediately pass into the large stage of decomposition. This last stage of decomposition of animal substances is infinitely more poisonous than all the previous ones, as we may see in the rapid fatality of the exhalations from cesspools, which have not been cleared out for 30 years or more. Of this, more hereafter. In the fosse surrounding the town is to be cleared out of dried up, as is highly desirable for the health of the inhabitants of all towns. This work should only be undertaken in the depth of winter. Winter మధ్యలో చేయమన్నాడు ఇలాంటివన్నీ. The water should be carried off in the form of ice layers, and the ice that forms again in a few nights should next be taken away, and so on till no more water remains. వాటర్ క్యారీ చేయడం కాకుండా గడ్డగట్టేస్తుంది వాళ్ళ కంట్రీస్లో వింటర్లో. ఆ గడ్డగట్టిన ఐస్ అంతా తీసుకెళ్ళిపోయి మొత్తం అక్కడ కింద ఇంకేం లేకుండా అది పూర్తయ్యే వరకు ఐస్ తీసుకెళ్ళిపోమన్నాడు, ఎక్కడో పడేయమన్నాడు పట్టుకుపోయి. But as the removal of mud from town ditches is much preferable to letting it gradually dry up, seeing that throughout the whole time required for the latter, noxious vapors are constantly exhaling, there is no better time for removing it than in severe cold. The mud, which is always in a state of putrefaction, is always warm and never freezes so much as to prevent its being easily dug out in winter. We can also more readily dispense with draught cattle on account of the excellent condition of the roads in severe frosty weather. After great inundations on the flat land, the spontaneous drying up of which cannot be expected to take place in a short time, it is requisite that all should lend a hand to cut ditches through and round about the inundated country. But if it is impossible to drain off the water into the river on account of its low level, a number of small windmills must be erected in order to pump off the water as quickly as possible and dry the land. For if this be not done, the water readily takes on the putrefactive process, giving rise from spring to autumn to dysenteries and putrid fever. The low-lying houses that have been inundated by the water are a fertile source of epidemic diseases. The police authorities must see that every householder digs a deep ditch round his premises, and especially round his dwelling house, that he has all the windows and doors open for the greater part of the day, that he occasionally lights fires even in summer, and that in winter at all events before he rises in the morning, all the doors and windows are left open for an hour at a time. There are places that are destitute of the often unacknowledged benefit of a sufficient supply of fresh flowing water, in place of which the inhabitants are obliged to make use of spring or rainwater brought from a distance, or to put up the rainwater only. In all such cases, they collect their supply of water for a long time in large reservoirs, in which it becomes stale in a few days and furnishes a very unwholesome drink, the source of many diseases. Soon it again becomes clear and inodorous, but in a short time the putrefaction recommences, And so it goes on until the water is all consumed. The greater part of it in a very bad taste. I should not here attempt to determine whether these disadvantages might have been obviated by the construction of artificial aqueducts on no very expensive scale or of very deep wells, but I am convinced that in flat localities on firm soil, it is possible to resort to one or other of these plants, whatever may be alleged against it, by the paltry parsimony of many corporations who look unmoved, whilst many such communities gradually die out. పెద్ద ఎక్స్పెన్సివ్ ఏం చేయక్కర్లే ఇలాంటి కొన్ని టేకప్ చేస్తే చాలంటున్నారు. In the absence of such a radical cure, I would advise every householder to keep his supply of water in casks, in which for every 400 pounds of water, 1 pound of powdered wood charcoal should be thrown. Which, according to the discovery of Lowick, possesses the power of preserving water from putrefaction and of making stale water sweet. చార్కోల్ పౌడర్ ఏమన్నాడు, వేస్తే వాటర్ ప్యూరిఫై అవుతుంట, అది కిందకి వెళ్ళిపోతుంది, పైన వాటర్ ఫస్ట్ క్లాస్గా ఉంటుంది, తాగడానికి పాడైపోకుండా శుభ్రంగా ఉంటుంది అన్నాడు. మనకి దీని బదులే పటిక వాడతాం, పటిక వాడితే అవన్నీ శుభ్రంగా ఉంటాయి, పటిక పౌడరు. The clear fluid may be drawn off when required through a tap provided with a tight linen bag. ఎందుకు వాళ్ళు అవి చల్ల దేశాలని పేరే కానీ వాళ్ళు చలి మనం భరించినట్టు చలి భరించలేరు వాళ్ళు. మనం మామూలుగా అనుకుంటాం వాళ్ళ చలి దేశాలు కదా, మనకన్నా చలి భరించగలరు అనుకుంటాం. మనం ఇక్కడ వేడి దేశాల్లో మనం ఎండ భరించగలం, చలి భరించగలం. అక్కడికి ఆల్స్కి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు అంతే, వాళ్ళు శుభ్రంగా కోడ్లు అవన్నీ వేసేసుకున్నారు. మేము స్వెటర్ కూడా తీస్తాం పైకి వెళ్ళేసరికి, అదే చలియటం లేదా అన్నారు, ఎక్కి పైకి వెళ్ళేసరికి చెమట పోస్తుంది ఆ మంచు కొండల్లోకి. వెళ్ళ కొంతసేపు అయ్యాక అప్పుడు స్వెటర్ వేసుకున్నాం. అంటే ఎయిర్ ఉండదు, వాడు ఇంట్లో ఇవన్నీ క్లోజ్ చేస్తాడు, కార్లో ఏసీ, ఆఫీస్లో ఏసీ, బయట ఎక్స్పోజ్ అవ్వడం అనేది ఉండదుగా. అందుకే ఇవి తెలుసుకున్న ఫ్యామిలీస్, ఈ ఆధ్యాత్మికమైన స్పిరిచువల్ ట్రైనింగ్ ఉన్నటువంటి ఫ్యామిలీస్ కంపల్సరీగా వాళ్ళు వీకెండ్ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్కి వెళ్ళిపోయి బయట ఈ కొండలవి ఎక్కడం, తిరగడం, సైకిల్ వేసుకు తిరగడం, అన్ని ఎక్సర్సైజ్ ఉంటాయి, బయటికి ఎక్స్పోజ్ అవ్వడం ఉంటుంది, గాలికి ఎక్స్పోజ్ అవ్వడం ఉంటుంది, ఇవన్నీ చేస్తారు వాళ్ళు విపరీతంగా. ఆ చేసే వాళ్ళల్లో కొండలు ఎక్కడం అది కూడా ఏజ్డ్ వాళ్ళతో కూడా మనం ఎక్కలేము. రుడాల్ఫ్ ఉన్నారు, ఆయన 80 ఏళ్ళు, ఆయన కొండ ఎక్కినంత దీనిగా మనం ఎక్కలేము, అంత బాగా ఎక్కుతాడు ఆయన. కుర్రాడు అది. Now clinical materia medica by Farrington. Sepia continue, not start. Already one chapter Sepia is completed, the second chapter also Sepia. Continued. Let us resume our study of sepia. Going still lower in the abdomen, we find it exhibiting a very marked action on the uterine organs, causing, as I mentioned the other day, engorgement of the uterus with displacement. In a very advanced sepia case, the uterus is enlarged and the cervix is indurated. The organ is either prolapsed or retroverted. Leukorrhea is a very common prominent symptom, the discharge being a yellowish green color and somewhat offensive. With these objective symptoms, we find bearing down pains in the abdomen and in the small of the back. This is so extensive at times that it seems to interfere with breathing. Sometimes the patient feels as if everything would be forced out through the vulva. This feeling is relieved by sitting with the limbs crossed. With the bearing down, there is associated a backache referable to the lumbar or sacral region. It is decidedly worse when the patient is standing or walking. There are burning pains in the uterus and sometimes pains of a sharp character shooting upwards, or there may be a sensation as if the uterus were clutched by a hand, a symptom to be found also under cactus and lilium tigrinum. The menses are usually late and scanty, also exceptionally they may be early and profuse. The most similar remedy to sepia is lilium tigrinum, for the provings of which we are indebted to Dr. William Penney of Bath, Maine. He was led to make the provings after learning that the flowers of this plant had caused convulsions in a child. అది చూసి ఆయన దీన్ని ప్రూవ్ చేశాట ఆ ఫ్లవర్ స్మెల్కి. He thought that it might prove to be a valuable remedy in the convulsions of children. In his provings, he was assisted by Dr. Dunham and a number of ladies. He observed convulsions in the course of the provings, but in almost every instance, some alteration in the functions of the uterus and ovaries was noticed. The uterine symptoms of lilium tigrinum are those which often accompany or follow pregnancy and labor. It is indicated in cases of subinvolution. The uterus does not regain its normal size after confinement, and the lochia lasts too long. When the patient rises to walk, the uterus falls by its own weight. The patient complains of a heavy dragging sensation, principally in the hypogastric region. She feels the need of some support to hold up the abdominal organ. This is very similar to sepia. In sepia, as stated, the woman sits with her legs crossed, thus giving an artificial support to the uterus. The leukorrhea too is very similar. Under sepia, it is yellowish green or milky, somewhat fetid and often excoriating. Under lilium, I think the most characteristic leukorrhea is watery, yellowish or yellowish brown and excoriating. The excoriating property of lilium is characteristic. The provers of lilium had in 2 cases prolapses and in 1 retroversion of the uterus. There is urging to urinate under lilium. Under the urine process, when the urine passes, it causes burning and smarting. The same kind of feeling at the meatus urinaris as the leukorrhea causes at the vulva. Then too you will find urging to stool, morning diarrhea, hurrying the patient out of bed, the stool being yellow, pepescent and causing an excoriating feeling at the anus. Here lilium rubs against sulfur, which has characteristically early morning diarrhea. The lilium symptoms are usually worse in the afternoon, while those of sepia are worse in the forenoon. Lilium has some chest symptoms which are worthy of note. Patients experience a full crowded feeling in the chest as though there was too much blood there. They want the windows open as fresh air gives them relief. This oppression of chest is caused by venous stasis. With it, there is a taste of blood in the mouth, reminding one of pulsatilla and hemomelis, both of which have that symptom. Pulsatilla, hemomelis, lilium, మూడింట్లో ఉందన్నమాట. Smell of blood in the mouth. There is a feeling as of a rivet or a bullet in the mammary region. Also a feeling of coldness about the heart. Natramur cures this last symptom when it appears during mental exertion. Lilium when it occurs as a result of uterine disease. Natramur ఏమో mental exertion వలన వస్తే దీంట్లోనేమో uterine disease వలన. Calibichromicum, calicloratum and carboanimalis also have it. And Dr. Richard Hughes reports a case in which he cured with petroleum. Helonius, according to Dunham, produces profound melancholy, deep undefined depression with a sensation of soreness and weight in the womb, a consciousness of the womb. Lilium dulls the intellect, produces a sensation of hurry with debility and distress based on an apprehension of having some fatal or serious malady. And further, Helonius is an excellent remedy when there is a tired, aching feeling and some burning in the back and legs. This is common. This is common enough with women, and no remedy unless it is picric acid relieves more promptly. The debility of Helonius is the result of impaired nutrition. Experiments have clearly demonstrated the fact that a diminution of red corpuscles and a general impoverishment of the blood results from its use. ఈ డ్రాగింగ్ డౌన్లో లిలియం టిగ్లో ఒక పిక్యూరియర్ సిమ్టమ్ ఉంది. ఈ రైట్ సైడ్ క్లావికల్ దగ్గర నుంచి డ్రాప్స్ ఆఫ్ వాటర్ ఇలా కింద పెల్విస్లోకి పడుతున్నట్టుగా అనిపిస్తుంది. అది పిక్యూరియర్ లిలియం టిగ్లో. కోల్డ్ వాటర్ డ్రాప్స్ ఈ రైట్ క్లావికల్ దగ్గర నుంచి ఇలాగా డౌన్కి పెల్విస్లోకి పడుతున్నట్టుగా ఉంటాయి. రకరకాల సెన్సేషన్స్. చూడు ఎంతమంది మీద ఆయన ప్రూవ్ చేశారు. వాళ్ళకి రాకుండా నీకే వచ్చింది కాబట్టి అంటే ఇంత పెద్దవాడైనా 30 వేసాయంట. నోటికి తెలియకుండా ఇక్కడ తెలిసింది. అది అదే విచిత్రం. అక్కడ ఉండగా బలవాడివే. The chronic diseases by Hahnemann. Nature of chronic diseases. The homeopathic healing art, as taught in my own writings and in those of my pupils, when faithfully followed, has hitherto shown its natural superiority over any allopathic treatment in a very decided and striking manner. And this is not only in those diseases which suddenly attack men, the acute diseases, but also in epidemic diseases and in sporadic fever. Venereal diseases also have been radically healed by homeopathy much more surely, with less trouble and without any sequelae. For without disturbing or destroying the local manifestations, it heals the internal fundamental disease from within only through the best specific remedy. but the number of the other chronic diseases on this great earth has been immeasurably greater and remains so. Treatment by allopathic physicians hitherto merely served to increase the distress from this kind of disease. For this treatment consisted of a whole multitude of nauseous mixtures, compounded by the druggist from violently acting medicines in large doses, of whose separate true effects they were ignorant. స్ట్రాంగ్ మెడిసిన్స్ మిక్స్ చేసి ఇస్తే సపరేట్గా దేని తాలూకు డేంజరస్ ఎఫెక్ట్స్ సైడ్ ఎఫెక్ట్స్కి వాళ్ళకి తెలియదు, వాళ్ళు తెలుసుకునేంత ఇది లేదు, ఓపిక. అవి కలిపి వీళ్ళ ఏదో మెడిసిన్గా ఇచ్చేయడం. టుగెదర్ విత్ ది యూజ్ ఆఫ్ manifold baths, the sudorific and salivating remedies, the pain-killing narcotics, the injections, fomentations, fumigations, the blistering plasters, the exudaries and fontanelles, but especially the everlasting laxatives, leeches, cuppings, and starving treatments, or whatever names may be given to all these medicinal torments, which continually varied like the fashions. Continually varied like fashions. By these means, the disease was either aggravated until the vital force, spite of so-called tonics used as intervals, was more and more diminished, or if any striking change was produced by them instead of the former sufferings, there appeared a worse state, nameless diseases caused by medicine, far worse and more incurable than the original natural one, while the physician consoled the patient with the words, "The former sickness I have been fortunate enough to remove. It is a great pity that a new disease has appeared, but I hope to be as successful in removing this latter as in the former." అని వాడిని కన్సోల్ చేస్తాడు పేషెంట్. ఏం పర్లేదు, యువర్ ఓల్డ్ డిసీజ్ హ్యాస్ బీన్ క్యూర్డ్, అన్ఫార్చునేట్లీ దిస్ న్యూ డిసీజ్ హ్యాస్ కమ్. As how the old disease was cured, I will cure this new disease also for you. So don't be sorry, don't worry. Definitely I will cure. Like that he consoles. And so, while the same disease assumed various forms, and while new diseases were being added by the use of improper, injurious medicine, the sufferings of the patient were continually aggravated until his pitiable lamentations were hushed forever with his dying breath, and the relatives were soothed with the comforting pretense. Everything imaginable has been used and applied in the case of the deceased. సో వాడు పోయాక వాళ్ళందరూ చెప్తారు, మ్యాక్సిమం నేను చేయాల్సినంత చేస్తాను. అందుకే వెంటనే కళ్ళజోకు తీసాడు. It is not so. It is not so with homeopathy, the great gift of God. Even in these other kinds of chronic diseases, which disciples, by following the teachings presented in my former writings and my former oral lectures, accomplished far more than all the aforementioned methods of curing. That is, when they found the patient not too much run down and spoiled by the allopathic treatment, as was unfortunately too often the case when the patient had any money to spend. ఆ మనీ అంతా అయిపోయే వరకు అవన్నీ వాడుతూ పూర్తిగా స్పాయిల్ అయిపోతుంది కదా. Using the more natural treatment, homeopathic physicians have frequently been able in a short time to remove the chronic disease which they had before them, and after examining it according to all the symptoms perceptible to the senses, and the means of cure were the most suitable among the homeopathic remedies used in their smallest doses, which had been so far proved as to their pure true effects. And all this was done without robbing the patient of his fluids and strength. Robbing the patient fluids and strength, as is done by the allopathy of the common physician, so that the patient fully healed could again enjoy gladsome days. These cures indeed have far excelled all that allopathists had ever, in rare cases, been able to effect by a lucky grab into their medicine chest. The complaints yielded for the most part to very small doses of that remedy, which had proved its ability to produce the same series of morbid symptoms in the healthy body. And if the disease was not altogether too invertible and had not been too much in too great a degree mismanaged by allopathy, it often yielded for a considerable time, so that mankind has good reason to deem itself fortunate even for that much help, and indeed it often proclaimed its thankfulness. A patient thus treated might and often did consider himself in pretty good health when he fairly judged of his present improved state and compared it with his far more painful condition before homeopathy had afforded him its help. Sanicula కొంటుంది Sanicula చదువుతున్నాం కొంత చదివాం కొంత Clark Dictionary of Veterinary Medicine. We are reading about Sanicula. Guernsey chose Sanicula on the italicized symptoms, being the direct opposite of the special Sanicula condition, and it is noted under no other remedy. Opposites as well as similars may serve as indication. Goodlands reports these cases. 1. Printer 40. Suffering for some weeks from the results of overwork, dull pain in forehead over eyes, feels as if eyes being driven back into head, aggravated in warm closed room by application of mind, ameliorated in open air. Mind wanders when trying to apply it, cannot keep at any one thing. No appetite, bad taste, tongue coated white, aggravated morning. Dry mouth, no thirst, fears he will lose his reason. Sanicula 10M cured. Number 2. Mrs. H 45, constantly chilly mingled with flashes of heat. Chills aggravate morning, evening turning in bed, ameliorated by external warmth. Chills at irregular times, spread from below up. During chill wants to be chills aggravated moving, even turning in bed, ameliorated by external warmth. Chills at irregular times, spread from below up. During chill wants to be uncovered. During heat wants covers off. Pains and aching in limbs. Feels sore and bruised, both flesh and bone. cannot put hands to head or behind for pain in shoulders. Head dull, heavy. Warmth ameliorates pain, but aggravates head. Bad taste. Wants sour things. Some thirst with fever. Urine dark, scanty. Sanicula tenem cured. Observed that in the eye cases of sanicula there is marked photophobia without much inflammation. The cases he cured had these symptoms. Must close eyes continually. With this, an awful discharge of thick yellow greenish matter, excoriating any part it touches. In one child, there was as well greenish nasal discharge, excoriating nostrils and lips. Peculiar sensations are had as if open and wind went through it. Of cold cloth around brain, or as if of scalp, all drawn up to vertex. Coldness in throat, throat as if too large, back as if in two pieces, lumbar vertebrae as if gliding past each other, especially when rocking in a chair. Feeling of distraction. There is great fear of the dark, constant desire to look behind her. Dreams of robbers. Stool full of jogged particles suggests the condition known as intestinal sand. Square stool is also peculiar. The symptoms are aggravated by touch. Child cannot bear to be approached. In bed, one cannot bear to lie near or touch another. Cannot bear to have one part touch another. Sweat where parts as crossed thighs touch. Part lain on sweats. Must loosen clothing. Slight pressure aggravates more than hard. Aggravated from strain, from riding in cars. Aggravated descending, aggravated motion, rising arm, putting arms behind back, working. Misstep, aggravated misstep, walking jar. Cough causes bursting in vertex, emulated by rest, aggravated by leaning head forward, emulated by leaning it back. Awakes at night with arms under head. On waking, child rubs eyes and nose with fist. Light and noise aggravate. Eating aggravates. Urging to stool while eating. Also aggravated. Also aggravated before eating. And ameliorated after breaking fast. And when stomach full, swallowing aggravates. Ameliorates vomiting. Aggravates at noon. Ameliorated in the open air. Aggravated warm room. Head and skin symptoms chiefly. Ameliorated warmth wraps up the head in cold weather. Aggravated becoming cool after running. Pain in jaw. Aggravated from draught of air, especially cold air. Cannot bear cold wind on back of head or neck. Aggravated by change, especially to damp weather. Periodicity chills every other day. Symptoms of the proving recurred repeatedly during 5 years. Smoking aggravates erectations, emulates nausea. Pains go right to left, front to back, and back to front, shift much. Relations. W.J. Guernsey considered sanicula the chronic of chamomilla. Compare the constituents of water, especially natramur and calcarea. Dread of downward motion, borax. Head sweat, calcarea, silicea. Soreness behind ears, viscid discharge, graphitis and soreness. Ringworm, ringworm on tongue, natramur. ran yes అంటే ఏంట్రగో ranunculus బల్బ్ కాదు natramur ranunculus scleratus. Ranunculus scleratus. What है? Ranunculus ये Manamo Manasa. Drinks little and often, vomits as soon as it reaches the stomach, arsenic. Symptoms change constantly, laccanum pulsula. Sphincter not under control, allows. Stool recedes, silesia, tuja. Must be removed mechanically, selenium. Crumbling at anus, magnesium. Odor of stool follows despite bathing, sulfur. Excoriation about anus, sulfur, lycopodium, chamomilla. Places hand and vulva for support, lilium tigrinum and murex. Offensive foot sweat, graphitis, sornum, silesia. Burning soles, lacasis, medornum, sanguinaria, sulfur, calcarea. Kicks off clothing in coldest weather, heparsulf and sulfur. Skin of neck wrinkled, hangs in folds, abrotanum, iodium, natrum, sarsaparilla. Vomits, Kirmcase. Falls asleep after vomiting like a thuza. Fish brain odor, calcarea. Fish brain odor. Fish brain ante water containing BRINE. Calcarea, graphitis, scab of ulcer. Medornum, moisture from anus. Tellurium, ear discharge. Trement, stool when eating. Pyramid, thrombodium. Cough from laughing or talking. Phosphorus, argentum nitricum. Sweet expectoration, sanguinaria and sternum. Aggravated lifting arms, Baraita carb, conium, cuprum, ferrum, ledum. Symptoms increase to noon and decrease after, sanguinaria, spigeria. Dreams of robbers, natrum. Cries before urinating, lycopodium. Fears darkness, grindalia and stramonium. Fears touch, sina, antimthos, arnica. Sea sickness and train sickness, arnica, calculus and tobacco. Headache from nape to eyes, silesia, sanguinaria. Wraps up head, magnesium or silesia, sornum. Mental restlessness when reading, procera. Depression with feeling of impending misfortune, calcarea. Irritability, chamomilla and conium. Child rubs nose and eyes on waking. Yes, CIL. SCIL, Skilla. Skilla కాకుండా స్కిల్లా అవుతుంది. స్కిల్లా మెరిటిమా. స్క్విల్లా అవుతుంది. ఇది స్కిల్లా, SCILLA. స్కిల్లా మెరిటిమా. సి ఆని అంటారు. రెడ్ వెరైటీ. సముద్రపు ఉల్లిపాయ. న్యూమరికల్ ఆర్డర్ బిలియస్. Feature of fresh bulb. అది స్కిల్లా. మళ్ళీ స్కిల్లా వేరు. Hair lusterless, alumina and kali carb. Clinkers, kali bike. Causation, strains and jarring. Mind, instability of purpose. Constantly changing his occupation. want of energy, forgetful, depression, mind wanders from one subject to another, even when conversing, nervous irritability, misconstrues actions of others, child headstrong and obstinate, crying and kicking, especially 9 p.m. to 12, headstrong crossness quickly alternating with laughter and playfulness in children, intense depression, feels no one admires her, everyone hates her, wants nothing to do with anyone, most trifling cares unbearable, fear of impending misfortune, restless desire to go from place to place, great aversion to darkness, constant irresistible desire to look behind her, feels like cursing, intermittent fever. Child wants to be in constant motion night and day, averse to be touched, restless, no amelioration from moving, easily upset by slight word or act, forgets common details of recent occupation, dreads work on account of weakness and exhaustion. Generalities. Dread of usual work on account of weakness and exhaustion, with irresistible desire to lie down, restlessness, hard to remain long in one position, emulated by motion, no rest day and night, always aggravated from 9 p.m. till after midnight, child kicks off clothing, even in coldest weather, wants to lie on something hard, great soreness, stiffness and lameness of parts. Child looks old, dirty, greasy, and brownish. Progressive emaciation. అది శాండల్వుడ్ నుంచి కూడా ఉంది మెడిసిన్. ఇదిగో శాంటలం, శాంటలం ఆల్బమ్ ఇండియా, శాండల్వుడ్, శాండ్విచ్ ఐలాండ్స్, న్యూమరికల్ ఆర్డర్, శాంటలేషియా, శాంటలేషియా. The oil distilled from the wood, dilutions with alcohol, gonorrhea and kidney ache, వాటికి పనికొస్తుంది. The word santalum is of Persian origin. Santalum అనేది. Sandalwood oil is obtained from several species of santalum, santalum album being the chief. Its use in old school practice is in gonorrhea. Shirtliff observed a man taking the oil for gonorrhea soon after each dose. An acute aching pain felt in the kidney region, so severe that if he was standing, he was obliged to sit, which gave some relief. On this hint, Shirtliff gave it in this case. An elderly man looking worn and haggard complained of pain in the region of left kidney from ribs to crista iliae. Brought on by walking, ameliorated by leaning forward, completely ameliorated by lying down, ameliorated by pressing a clenched fist into back. The pain had lasted 6 months and was very acute when on sulfur, berberis and bryonia gave no relief. Tantalum 1 drop every 4 hours soon gave great relief and entirely removed the pain in 2 months. Potency ఇవ్వలే. So this is for today. ఇదిగో దీంట్లోనే ఇది కంట్లో లేదు మెడిసిన్, అందుకే దీంట్లో పోయినాం. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्ताम् न्याय्येन मार्गेण महीं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यम् लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः वासुदेव वासुदेव वासुदेव